everybody. How are you all doing? Thank you for being here to join us. This is the Citizens Bond Steering Committee, and I'm Holly Morris-Coontz. I'm Superintendent in Dripping Springs ISD. I want to say thank you so much to all of you for signing up to be a part of this. We did a bond 2 years ago and had a Citizens Bond Steering Committee, and that really worked out well for us. I think it helps to have community members and taxpayers in the room helping us to make the best decisions about what goes into the bond and what should be a part of the packages and not. And so really our work is going to be turning all of this over to y'all to help us understand what really is best for our community and what we think is best for Dripping Springs ISD together. And so I'm excited that you wanted to be a part of this and just want to say thank you. I know it's a couple of long meetings and a lot of your time, and everybody has either had a full work day or have to find somebody to watch their kids or, sacrifice in other ways to be here. So we just want to say from the very beginning, thank you for giving of your time. We have Lizzie, who is here. Dr. Johnson is from Transcend, and she will be helping us through this process as an outside facilitator who helps us to kind of run through and make sure that we're on track, on schedule, and organized. So you can see you've got in front of you a binder that she has provided, and that will allow us to give you a lot of information because you're going to be taking in a lot of information on these various nights, and there's a lot to process, but that'll help you stay organized throughout the process. Up here we have our charge, so just want you to know that our Bond Steering Committee is an ad hoc committee of the board, so our Board of Trustees is who you will ultimately be responsible for reporting to and making your recommendation to. Please know that our board is actually who makes the final decision on what goes into the bond package. So y'all, as y'all are doing this work, we'll be putting that together, recommending that to them, and they will make the final determination for that package. Anything that I am missing, Lizzie? All right, I do want to also introduce our Deputy Superintendent, Elaine Cockburn. Elaine, if you will wait, Elaine is the other person who really helps put this together. I'm just standing up here with a microphone, but she's the person who's been doing all of the hard work and getting this going with Lizzie. So just want to say thank you to her for all of the coordination. And if y'all have anything, questions, it's probably Elaine that you're hearing from as far as timing and all of that stuff. So thank you guys again for being here, and we're so glad to have you as a part of this committee.
Much. Well, good evening. It's great to be here. Very familiar faces in the room. So for those of you who aren't aware, I actually worked in the district all year last year with your Long Range Facility Planning Committee. And if you were on that committee, would you raise your hand, please? Oh, thank you. Thanks. So see, everybody's got one of those people at their table, at least one, and that's good. And we did that purposefully and asked them to participate and come back because they have a lot of knowledge and they knew what their recommendation was and they wanted to continue to participate. And so thank you for being here again and giving of your time to the district. And so as Holly stated, I'm Lizzie, and you can call me Lizzie. You don't have to call me Dr. Johnson. I like Lizzie. And I am the CEO of Transcend 4. We are a educational consulting company, and I was in public ed for 26 years. Ooh, that's hard to say that sometimes. And I was a teacher and a campus administrator and a central office administrator and worked with various districts around the state and around the Metroplex area in the throes of my career. And now what we do is, me and my team, we go out and help school districts with projects like this. So we help guide school districts through this very intense project, because this is a lot when you're talking about students, because that's the most important reason we're in this room, but we're also talking about people's money. And so we like to come in and help guide that process so that the district isn't heavy-handed in it, and we become the third-party facilitator, and we become your advocate. So what my job to do in this room every time we're together is to make sure we have a very open process. People get heard. You are there with the people at your table because you're going to join them every night. This is your group you're going to be with. We want everyone to feel like their voice is heard in this room. So another great thing about that is we have students in this room. So if you're a student, will you raise your hand so we can see you? Let's give them a round of applause. I think to have your clients in the room. And that's what your students are, they're your clients. And everything we talk about in this room and all the decisions we make are going to be about them. Sometimes that's hard because adults want the decisions to be about them first. I get it. But we've got to keep our focus on our students and what we're doing in this room and how it's going to benefit them in the long run, okay? So yes, I'm the crazy lady who gives you my cell phone number. That's what that is. That's not to an office. That's not to a call center. That is my cell phone number. And I give it to you because I want you to call me. And let me tell you why. In this room, there's going to be time for periods where we're not together, obviously, between meetings. And sometimes questions are going to come up, thoughts, concerns, things of that nature. Well, that's why I'm here. So you can either call me, you can send me a text message, or you can email me. So that's all of my information. And I do that because when you have questions, if you call someone at the district, and then you talk to another person at the district and another person, you're probably going to get a similar answer, but maybe not the same answer, right? Okay? Because they're all coming from a different point of view. But if you email me or call me, I can get you the best and most detailed answer. And not only am I going to send it to you, but I'm going to send it to the whole group. So that way, everybody in the room benefits from that information. Now, the group I worked with in the past, we didn't have a lot of that because there wasn't so much information. It was a lot about growth and demographics and looking at when schools need to come online to meet the challenges of your growing student population. This committee's a lot different because we're talking about money, and that sometimes gives a little angst in the room, and not a little, a lot. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, okay? Plus, we're talking about educational space and what we're doing to make sure our students have the best educational space. And so sometimes in this room it's going to get heated. I'm just telling y'all right now, I'm going to tell you straight out of the gates. Some people are going to get upset. We're going to have some cussing and discussing, right? There's going to be some people that, get into a little groan zone is what I call it. And that's okay because nobody's asking you to rubber stamp anything. We want you to make the recommendation as a committee. And that's what you need to be doing. So we want to have that open dialogue. So you have my information. You can write it down, but it's in your slides as well. And I'll give you this every night that we're together. But please contact me. I want to be helpful, and that's what I'm here for. And I want to make sure we have a really smooth process. So tonight, we've looked at the committee charge. We're going to go through some process overview and norms. So there's a lot of people in here, and one Lizzie, right? So we have to have some norms. So I was a middle school teacher, which means, you got to kind of keep the peace. If any of y'all work in a middle school, they're kind of weird, and I love middle school kids, but we have to just keep the peace in this room. And so making sure we have some order and some norms helps everyone enjoy the process. And tonight, Elaine is going to talk to us about prior bond projects and update you on where we're at with those, and some that are finished and some that are still in the works. And then School Finance 101. So we've got a good amount of material, but I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, tonight's about a 5 or 6. The rest of our meetings are going to be about a 9 or 15, okay? Because the information is only going to get more detailed and larger as we go. And so it's a lot. And I'm just so proud of you for being here because it shows that you have a heart for kids and you have a heart for your community, because nobody's going to give y'all a check when y'all leave. Did y'all know that? Nobody's paying you? Okay. We got some nice bottled water back there for you, but you're here out of the goodness of your heart and as a public service to your community, and I appreciate that. And so dig in, because it's almost like you've come back for night school in a way, okay? All right, so in order to get to know the people at your table, I would like for you to do one thing. Every table, except our table over here, and we're gonna get somebody to help y'all, but we have a table facilitator at every table. So if you're a table facilitator, will you make yourself known to your table? There you go. So, what are facilitators? They're there to help. They're there to help support the table, to make sure that your questions get answered, that if you need data or more information, they'll let me know. But they're there as a guide and a resource. So tonight, as we begin our introductions, I would like for them to go first at the table, and they will pass it to someone on their left or right. And I would like for you to use this as your introduction prompt. You are going to explain to everyone your name, your occupation, what's your connection to the district, and your best vacation ever. Now, if you haven't gone on that vacation, just tell us which one you want it to be, okay? I always say my best vacation is my next vacation, right? And so you can say your wish vacation, that's okay. But this will help crack some ice and get y'all to know each other and explain why you wanted to be in this room based on your connection to the district. So we're going to start with our table facilitators first. They'll kick it to somebody. When your table is finished, facilitators, if you'll give me a thumbs up so I know it's time to move on, and then we can get going. Okay, great. So go ahead and get started. Chance to make some new friends. That's very important. So thank you for introducing yourself, and I want to add a little caveat to this. Why do I ask you to share your vacation? I think it shows something about you, gives it a little insight into who you are, where you like to vacation and what you like to do. But I want you to think about when you go on vacation and you meet people. We all meet people on vacations, total strangers from other places that we don't live. And the conversation somehow always goes to where you live, like telling people about your community and, well, where we live, da-da-da-da-da. And I love that because I think it helps you learn other people. And so in your head, I just want you to think about this. If you were meeting a new person on vacation, what would you tell them about Dripping Springs? Okay? I want you to just think about it. We're not going to share it yet, but I want you to think, what would you tell them about your community? I bet some of the things you would tell them is about your school district. And if that's the case, if you shake your head yes, let me know. I bet it is. I talked to a lot of you tonight as you came in and you sat down at your tables, and many of you have children in the district, and I love that, because especially when you have young kids in the district, because I think it really shows that you're invested in a lot of things other than just what they do every day, that you're really thinking about the global picture, which is all the kids. And so when we talk in this room, that's really what this is about. It's hard sometimes to let go of what you want and everything that you want for yourself personally to think about the big picture. There's a lot of students in your district. And y'all are going to make decisions in this room about kids that don't even go to the school district yet. They're not even here. And maybe not even born yet. Okay? So we've got to think in those terms, big picture. Okay? So thanks for sharing that intro with each other. So, like I told you, I was a middle school teacher, so my slides only have 4 bullets each because that's all the middle school kids could handle when I was teaching. So, everything you need every night will be in front of you. This binder is your playbook. So I'm an old coach too, and we have a playbook for things. That's your playbook. That's going to have everything you need. When you come next time, you will bring that back with you. You're going to take it home with you tonight. Because a lot of you will get home and you'll want to review the information, and you may even want to share it with someone. So we want you to have that at your fingertips. When you come back next time, the slides for next time will be printed, they'll be set at your place, and you'll just have to insert them into your binder. And thank you to the district for doing that. I know it's a lot of paper, but I'm going to tell you, people like to write things down. And not everybody likes a computer or a phone, and people like to scribe, and I think that's important. So that's why we provide those slides to you. We don't take breaks. Notice 6 o'clock came around and we started the meeting. That will be every time. When 8 o'clock hits, the meeting is over. You will never be in this room past that time. Now, if you want to go to the parking lot and have an extended meeting, you go right ahead. But Lizzie Johnson will not be facilitating that parking lot meeting, okay? And that's all right if you want to do that. So if you need a break, there are facilities out here. Please take time for yourself. I'm not asking you to be uncomfortable, and you're not bothering anybody if you need to get up and walk and leave and do that. We have some great leaders in the room who are here that are going to help us with some questions. Throughout this process, we're going to have other people in this room, third-party consultants like your demographer, your financial advisor, all of those people that work in the district, and they'll be here to answer questions as well. You being here is so important. So everybody gets a gold star tonight. I wish I had them, that I could put them on your lapel as you left. But really, it's so important you're here, because if you miss content, it's going to be hard for you to make decisions at the final meeting. So if you can't be here because something happens, you just come a little early to the next meeting and you get tutoring time with Lizzie. And so we'll sit down and we'll go through the slides and we'll talk about what you missed. And if you can't be here early, send me an email. We could set up a Zoom or a call. I'm happy to do that with anyone in this room at any time. So you're not bothering me. That's my job, okay? All right. So we have 4 rules. Once again, 4 bullets, okay? 1 speaker at a time. Now, these tables, a little heavy with people, right? It's real easy to get into the sidebar conversation. That's easy to do. Please try not to do that. Only because when you're speaking at the tables, I'd love for everyone to hear what your opinion is, what your thought is, your suggestion, your questions, things of that nature. When our speaker is presenting, we're not going to stop and interrupt them. We're going to let every speaker that presents get through their whole presentation every time. First of all, it's just kind and respectful. I know when I present, if I get interrupted, it throws me off, and then I'm not at my best. So we're not going to stop and ask questions during the presentation. We're going to have another way to do that. We're going to respect people who are speaking and listen with the desire to contribute and learn. That's very important. And then engage in the entire meeting. You're never going to hear me say, turn off your phones. I'll never say that because my phone's on right now. But the more you can be here with us, the better. So if you need to take a call and go outside, that's fine. If you need to answer some texts, that's fine. But just try to stay here with me. Those phones are great. I know they keep us connected to the people we love. But just try to be here in the meetings. Like I said, so much content. We want to make sure you're absorbing all of it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how we do Q&A. And some of my friends who are here, who've been in my meetings before, know we have a process because we want to get out of here at 8 o'clock, right? And so after each presentation, I'm going to jump back up and say, okay, you have 8 minutes, you have 9 minutes, you have 10 minutes, whatever the clock allows, to talk at your table. Because what Garrett heard, Jen heard something a little different, right? And so we want y'all to talk at your table about the presentation you heard. Sometimes it's real easy to get off topic. You know, oh, that lady at the high school didn't answer the phone fast enough today, or my bus was late, or whatever it is. But let's try to stay on the topic because there's a lot to digest and unpack. So once we've had our table talk, we are going to go around and every table is going to have their very important question. We call it the VIQ, very important question to ask. Now, the reason I do this is because a lot of times questions are just thrown out at random, and this is really going to make you think about your question, and it's going to make you work together because this whole process is us working together as a group. It's very collaborative in nature. So we're going to ask the question. The table facilitators, y'all see those microphones? That's their microphone, and it's theirs, has their name on it. And so they're going to use that to ask the question, and then at the end of the night, if your question wasn't asked or answered, you're going to put it on a Post-it note. And before the next meeting, I will send a beautiful email with all that Q&A so everybody gets it. And, you know, and there may be some questions tonight we can't just answer off the top of our head that we need to go back and get you some data for. That will be included as well. So just know, at no time does any question go unanswered. We just have a process, and it will make us have a very strong meeting where no one gets upset about staying in this room till 10 o'clock at night, okay? Because we don't want that. So tonight, we are going through our prior bond projects, school finance. That's our shaded in blue. These are every agenda that we're going to have in this room. But notice the watermark that says draft. That's purposeful, not a mistake, because sometimes we have to talk about other things that aren't listed up there, or you need us to cover something else a little bit more, so we'll add it in. This is your committee, so we don't want to skip something that needs to be addressed. So I put the draft watermark because it may change, but you can see all of the great things you're going to learn in this room. You're going to learn about demographics next time, facility needs. We're going to go on a tour in a bus. Isn't that going to be fun? It's so weird because adults love to go in buses, and I couldn't get out of a bus fast enough when I was younger, but they love it, and they take selfies, and they get all excited, and so, yeah, it's kind of weird, y'all, but you'll do it. You just wait, you'll do it. But we are going to talk about that Saturday as we get closer, and we're going to get in a bus and go to some different facilities that we want you to really look at. Because you may have kids in that building, but there may be things you don't see, right? That you need to see as a taxpayer and as a parent. So we get to meeting 4, and this is where we start outlining your menu. I'm going to talk about this a lot, but it's your project priorities. So it's all the things that the district's going to need in the next whatever amount of years. And that's your menu. It's like if you went to the restaurant to order dinner, you're going to start seeing the menu and seeing cost. Now, if you know anything about our current state of the world, things cost a lot of money. And construction is one of them, and designing buildings is one of them. This is not something to take lighthearted. So we're going to talk about that a lot and talk about soft costs and inflation and why things cost so much. And then we'll get to that night at meeting 4, you're going to start a little project of yourself at home, and you're going to go work on a bond project at home by yourself and putting it together. You're going to come back to meeting 5, and you're going to get your budget. The financial advisor is going to talk to you about what the capacity is the school district can take in to go to bond and how much bond money they can ask for. And that night, you're going to build a bond with your table. So that's the second time we're going to build a bond. So notice what I'm doing here. We're going to build a bond a lot of times, not just once. Because what I've learned in this business, if I only ask you to do it one time, you get upset at me. Because it's a lot of work, and you're going to want to practice it, is what I'm saying. And you're going to want to talk to your friends at your table. And you're going to want to go outside of this room and ask people in your neighborhood, at your church, the grocery store, your circle, what do you think about this? Because there's a certain amount of you in here. We can't have everybody in this room, but we want you to go talk to them and get their opinions and bring them back into the room. And then finally, at meeting 6, we're going to put the bond package together using an electronic system, and I'll explain all of that to you. It's awesome and it's fun, and we're going to get to watch the votes come in and do all of that. And then we'll just do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the potential bond. And then one thing that's not listed up here is that we will then, as a committee, a few of you will present the package to the board as a recommendation from this group. And we will be using a 2/3 consensus in this room to reach majority. And so the board will be ready to have that package recommendation presented, and then your work at that point is finished putting the bond together. There's a lot more work after that, but that would be the scope of your work in this committee. So when I work with adults, I find that adults work in silos a lot in their day-to-day work. And group work is not something they're used to, but you're going to be doing a lot of group work in here. And I show you this slide because you don't necessarily have to agree with something 100% to let it continue to evolve and move forward. And that's why I show you a gradient of agreement. It's just a slide that explains you may not 100% agree, but you don't see the need to stop the flow, and you want things to continue to progress. Then we get to this slide where all of you came in these doors tonight as a person a part of this group. You sit down, you're going to start hearing data, information, and content, and you start picking sides. I like to say diverge. You diverge to that side, like this is where I stand, this is where I stand. And then you have a grown zone. Now, you better like these people because you're not moving, all right? This is your family in this room, okay? And I do that because if you get comfortable with each other, you're more likely to be honest and open, and you get to say what you want to say. If I move you around all the time, that doesn't happen, you don't gel. And so I need you to bond with each other. So that's your family in here. And then eventually we all have to converge to a decision point. Because guess what? Time does not wait for us. And time is a big constant. That's why we have a timed agenda. That's why we have presenters who know how much time they get to present. And that's why we have a Q&A process. So we want time to be our friend, but we know it doesn't wait for us. So I use this slide with any time I work with committees, just so you understand that there is a process to this. There's a method to the madness, you might say. It's simple, but still a little complicated. And then finally, we're all going to funnel into some sort of consensus, and that consensus is going to be the best thing for your students in Dripping Springs ISD. And so every night we get together, I'm going to take through these slides in a brief review, just so you understand where we're at and where we're going. And that's my job. I'm here for you. I'm here to make sure the process is open and clean and transparent. I don't care if your bond's $1. I don't care if it's $10 million. That means nothing to me. My goal is that we have a solid committee work and that you get what you need to make these big, difficult decisions. Okay? So this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to Elaine, and she is going to come up and present our bond project history.
Thank you, Lizzie. Good evening, everybody. For those of you that served on long-range planning with me all last spring, I say welcome back. I hope you had a great summer, and we've got a lot of hard work to do again this fall. Those that are new to the group, welcome. I look forward to meeting you and getting to know you a little bit better. To the students in the room, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a long day to sit through class and then come and listen to a bunch of adults on things that are probably a foreign topic. A shout out to my 6th grader over here, Abigail. When I was in 6th grade, I sure didn't know what a bond was, and so hats off for taking this on voluntarily as well. She doesn't have to be here. She signed up for this, so appreciate that. All right, we're going to take a little trip down memory lane just to kind of give you some perspective of what's happened in the district over time. All right, going all the way back to 1996. Fortunately, when I was in the district the first time, I took the time to go back and find all the data on our previous bonds. And so this file still exists, thank goodness, but I was not here in 1996. But there was a bond in that year for $24 million, and that bond covered, and this is a testament to how much prices have changed. For that bond, the big projects were new elementary and high school improvements. I'm here to tell you, you cannot build an elementary for anywhere close to $24 million these days, so those were the good old days. Then we jumped to 2005. There was a $28 million bond. That too had a new elementary. Intermediate school expansion was the other big thing, and then you can see we start putting money in bonds to acquire land. 2007, the price jumps up. Now we're at $96 million. The big project in that bond was converting the high school and middle school campuses. So if you aren't aware of this, the current Dripping Springs High School was built to be a middle school or a junior high, whatever they called it in those years, and there was a decision to flip those two campuses. So the high school is where the middle school is now, and so those campuses flipped. So that was the major project in that bond, plus some land. Then we go all the way to 2014. Now we're $92 million. Again, an elementary, a middle school. This is the bond that funded construction of the stadium and the athletic facilities over at the high school. And then we start seeing technology come into our bond programs, because technology has become a big part of our education. And then improvements. What are improvements? Improvements are just facility improvements to existing facilities. Might be a support facility, might be a campus. Those things are roofs, HVAC, things that need to be replaced at the time. Then we go to 2018. 2014 was my first bond in the district, so I was part of that. In 2018, we go back out to the voters for $132 million, and this one expanded the high school, so the new J wing that we refer to, this is the bond that funded that. Again, a new elementary that is now Cypress. The relocation of Walnut Springs from here to the Dripping Springs Middle School site. And then again, you see land, technology, and improvements. Then in 2023, that was our last bond. I actually wanted to start this with a trivia question. When was our last bond? But you have it in your books, so you all would have gotten that correct. So I gave you the answer. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at what is in the 2023 bond, since that was our most recent and it's still ongoing, just so that you know what is already being covered in bond as we start talking about facilities and maintenance projects. So one of the larger projects in the current bond program is the construction of Elementary 6. That is being constructed in the Headwaters subdivision and is slated to open next August for the 25-26 school year. It is an 850 student campus. The foundation has been poured, walls will be going vertical very soon, and so that project is well underway. Another project under 2023 bond is adding on to Sycamore Springs Middle School. So when that campus was designed, but what happened was it was a big number and there was some hesitation, and so we scaled back that campus, built the core facilities for the middle school with the intention of coming back and adding classrooms to that facility. That is now happening. It actually would have probably happened sooner. But what happened in 2020? A little pandemic, and that kind of slowed progress for all school districts when it came to bond planning. So the expansion of Sycamore Springs, I've got some pictures in here, you'll see that. That is well underway and slated to open this spring. There is design money in this bond for high school number 2, middle school number 3, and elementary school number 7. You're going to see tonight that there was a lot of discussion with the long-range facility group on when do these campuses need to open. And so for those of you that served on that committee, I have a little bit of an update on where we are in that work. A new 18+ facility. 18+ is our program for students with special needs that have graduated but still require supports to go into the workforce. And so we educate those students until age 22. They are currently receiving those services in 2 portables on the high school campus. And so we are looking for a site to have a facility for those students that would feed from both the existing high school and the new high school. And so progress on that is happening, and we hope to be able to start building that project soon. We do have $15 million in the current bond program for land. Anyone bought land in this district recently? It's a little bit pricey. We do have $4 million and some change left from 2018 bond for land, so that would be used first, and then we would start accessing this $15 million. 2 of our older campuses, Dripping Springs Elementary and Dripping Springs Middle School, easy for me to say, received funding for some major renovations, and I'll show you some pictures of that. We did a lot of work in a short amount of time this summer, and so those renovations are about halfway complete and will be finalized next summer. The high school has a little bit of money for renovations there. We did complete the gym floor and the lighting renovations this summer, and so that's complete. Some small projects. The CL&I, for you that don't know, is our library. It's the Center for Learning and Innovation. So renovating those spaces at 2 of the older campuses and creating a makerspace for those campuses. The one at Dripping Springs Elementary was finished this summer. So that one's done, and then Rooster will happen next summer. And then some of the other things we had in this program are updating sound and lighting systems at various campuses. Part of that is complete. Replacing pressure-reducing valves. That sounds like a really fun project. Just a small amount of money. That's not been done. Campus security. This is a big one. So as part of the renovations at DSE and DSMS, we did address this campus guidelines this summer, so that was part of this work. And then ADA updates across the district. Finally, equipment, we have replacement buses in here. We've ordered a lot of those. It's taking over a year to get buses, so we're ordering buses for future years just so that they're here when we need them. We have money in there for portables. We haven't accessed that yet. We have money in the 2018 bond for portables. The board did designate some fund balance for portables, so we've accessed all of those funds before we use this bond money. And then some kitchen equipment for our kitchens across the district. That is proceeding. And then technology and infrastructure. Just as a footnote, the 2023 bond authorization was $223.7 million. We did not sell all of that at once, and so we're going to talk later this evening about authorization versus issuance. So last November, we did sell $100 million of that authorization, and so we're selling those bond proceeds as we need the cash to fund the projects. And so we're anticipating another sale right after the start of the calendar year. To show you some visuals, because everyone likes pictures, right? So this is a rendering of Elementary 6. Again, it started construction last May. Anticipated completion next summer. The architect is Fluger Architects, and the general contractor is American Constructors. So that's the front rendering of the campus. And this is a summer photo of the site from aerial view, and so you can kind of make out I don't think this pointer works, the footprint of the building, and it's set back towards the northern part of that site. The Sycamore expansion is shown here in white, so the existing building has the gray rooftop, and then the additional classrooms and science wings that are added on are there in a beige white color. That project started construction back in February. Again, anticipate completion this spring. The architect on that is VLK, and the general contractor is Bartlett Koch. And you can see a couple of weeks ago, the steel started going up. So if you drive down Sawyer Ranch, you might get a glimpse of that steel building. The Dripping Springs Elementary renovations, here's a picture of the cafeteria. So it got all new flooring, new ceilings, and this shows the color scheme throughout that building. And so what happened in the rest of this campus is not all of the classrooms, we couldn't do everything in one summer. We had about 58 days to do this work. And so that was a really tight schedule, but about a third to two-thirds of the classrooms received new floors, painted walls, new ceilings, HVAC updates. We did some plumbing renovations to that campus, and then a completely new office renovation. Anyone here have students at DSE? So you've seen that completely new office. Totally changed the interior of that space. And that includes that secure vestibule for security on that campus. Again, the library or the CL&I completely renovated that, added a makerspace there, the cafeteria renovations, a new fire loop added to the back of that building. That was a big plus for the campus. And then some new landscaping in front. And so again, phase 2 of that will happen next summer, but to a little bit smaller scale than what we bid off this summer. Same thing at Dripping Springs Middle School, started this summer. Same architect, PBK, for both of these renovation projects, and the general contractor is Rogers O'Brien. What happened there? Basically the same thing. New floors, walls, ceilings, HVAC to most of the classrooms, a completely new front office, so Dripping Springs Middle School parents. So you've seen that, completely different. Secure vestibule, renovated the library, the CL&I, it looks drastically different. The restrooms, man, if I could brag on anything, that was badly needed. Those restrooms look amazing now. And then new landscaping in front. So just like the elementary school, phase 2 of that will be completed next summer. And then high school 2 design. So I showed you we had money in this bond for design for 3 campuses. High school number 2 is in design. We're at schematic design. The architect on this is ELK. We've already named the CMAR. You might go, why? It's really important at the part of the design phase to bring in your contractors so they can help cost estimate as the architect is making designs and help us do more efficient building materials. They have better current pricing on materials and labor. And so American is working hand in hand with VLK and value engineering some things before we go to bid on this project. So this started with a launch process where we brought in a big group of community members to vision and dream what they want to see in this complex. That group turned into a PAT, a project advisory team. I was about to go blank on that acronym. And so they're meeting frequently to see updates where we are on the design, provide feedback. Again, we do not have construction money for this campus. We have the design money, but that will be something that needs to go in a future bond to actually build high school number 2. And then I wanted to mention, we also have a bond advisory committee. And what they do is they have oversight over issued bond funds. That committee was reestablished last fall, and it is an ongoing committee. There are 9 members with 2 alternates, and they have oversight. We meet quarterly. They serve 2-year staggered terms so that we have some continuity. So this is an ongoing committee. It doesn't follow just one bond program. It will follow all bond programs. And we meet quarterly. They get a financial report. We talk about what is happening in the projects, where they are. We've done site visits. Our next visit will be to the Sycamore expansion. They toured the Dripping Springs Middle School renovation this summer. And so we have another committee that actually provides oversight over the bond. If there were change orders or money needed to be moved between projects, it would go to that group first, and then it would go to the board for approval. Okay, so I love graphs because I'm an accountant by trade, and so who doesn't love graphs if you're an accountant? Holly, you're not an accountant, so. All right, this history that I went through rather quickly in the beginning, this just kind of breaks down the timeline in between bonds. So remember, we started in 1996 as far as a historical look back. It was 9 years before you saw another bond in this community. And then you see it was really quick, 2 years. And then a long period, 7 years, and then 4 years, and then 5 years. Dripping Springs ISD is considered a fast growth district. 4 or 5 year bonds is more typical of a fast growth district, not 9 years, and especially when you put technology in a bond. And that's really the best way for us to pay for technology infrastructure. It is expensive, it has to be changed all the time, and so if you go 9 years without a bond or technology, you either have to find another way to fund it or it gets really outdated. So you can see here in recent history, bonds have become more frequent. So I mentioned the Long Range Facility Planning Committee. And so I very much like you have a charge. I just want to give you some background about that committee so you'll understand the information that you're getting from that group. So again, that committee was formed last year. They actually started meeting in November of 2023. They wrapped up their work this past May. So they met for a long time. That's why we're good friends now. And we started that by really digging into the demographic data. Now, our demographer tells us when campuses should be brought online, but I sneakingly did not tell that committee that information because I wanted them to come to their own conclusions. And guess what? They aligned really well. So that committee's charge was to consider all needs for all district students, represent the priorities, expectations, and values of the entire committee, so not just the campus that you represent, but the entire Dripping Springs community, use facts and data to make informed decisions, and then strive for parity. So we did do some campus tours with that group as well, and their goal was to determine long-term what facilities is the district facing in the next 5 to 10 years. As Lizzie mentioned, that committee did not get cost. It was truly about numbers of students and timing of facilities. So you get the fun job of the cost, and so I know that's why most of you came back, because you want to see the cost associated with your work. So that's what that committee did. This is how that committee voted. So let me back up. We gave them all of this demographic data, and we say, you determine when campuses need to open. And so they did that work. We met again, and we showed them the demographers' numbers, and then we talked about, or the demographers' dates, and then we talked about the implications of some of their work, and they wanted to go back to the drawing board. So we gave them the ability to go back and revisit their time frames, redo, and then we voted, and you can see the votes were really close in some cases. So for elementary 7, the Long Range Facility Planning Committee recommended that that campus open in 28-29. Okay, one thing I learned in that committee is we have edgy speak that not everybody understands. So when we say 28-29, we mean the school year, so that would mean August of 28. So I know a lot of people think calendar years, and so I don't want to take for granted that you understand our schedules. So a 28-29 opening means August of 28 for that 28-29 school year. Middle school 3, this one was fun. You can see the votes were really close. 16 votes for opening in 28-29, 15 votes for a year later in 29-30. And then 1 vote pushing it out even another year. Well, one conversation that we had a lot was about opening multiple campuses in the same year. We are a very tiny administrative team. If I'm a Frisco or a Prosper, I can open multiple campuses all day long. In a community the size of Dripping Springs, for our staff opening 2 campuses in 1 year, that's tough. And so when we left, we talked about when we're here at this point in the year, we have actual student enrollment numbers, and we can see if they match what the demographer projected, or if we have more students or less students, and we would have better information to firm up this decision, because this committee kind of left going, well, either one of those years will work, but yes, we would love to have concrete data on what the 24-25 school year looks like. So we left that at 28-29, and then elementary 8, you can see 18 votes for opening that in the year 2030-31. This is what that looks like. Before I show you what this looks like, we've made an adjustment to the opening of high school 2. So all last spring, we were talking about high school 2 opening in 27-28. That worked beautifully because that was a school every year. We've moved high school 2 for multiple reasons, but the numbers, the new projected numbers for that campus support pushing it out a year. So now, the adjusted recommendations show high school 2 and elementary 7 opening in the same year. Yes, that gives me a little bit of heartburn, but it's definitely better than opening a high school, an elementary, and a middle school, or a high school and a middle school in the same year. So let's look at what is happening. Elementary 6 is opening this summer. The Sycamore expansion is opening in the fall. I say this summer, next summer. I'm already in 2025. So in 2025, we have an expansion and a new school opening. Then, by the year 2030, how many years is that? 5, with potentially 4 more campuses opening. So it's going to be a busy 5 years. So this is why you're here. We get to figure out when to ask the voters to fund these 4 schools, because we have 4 schools opening in 3 years based on the student projection numbers. Is anyone ready to leave? You're all gonna be here, right? It's fun work. All right, so going back to this graph, remember we went 4 years, and then we went 5 years. And then if you look at the timelines of opening campuses, you're potentially looking at going to bond in 2025, 2026, and 2028. Our superintendent loves this schedule. Or you could go in 25, 26, and 27, but you really can't go later than 28 for elementary number 8. So this is what we're going to be contemplating all fall. All right, Lizzie, back to you.
Okay, so we're going to take about 8 to 10 minutes at our table and talk with our families and come up with our questions. Your table facilitator is going to be scribing those so that when I give you your 2-minute warning, you can pick the most important one that you want to ask, and then we'll do that process. So start your deliberation discussion time. Okay, we're going to come back together in the big room. Thank you for your good discussions. I've heard a lot of good points and a lot of knowledge that some of you have that others don't know certain things, and you were sharing that knowledge with them. So great. Before we get started on our questions, could y'all turn your table numbers so I can see them? They're in the middle, because it'll help me call on your table. Perfect, thank you. Okay. I want to introduce someone that is here from my company, Mr. Henry Gideon. And Henry is a retired all things facilities and operations in school districts around our state. And so he now works for me and has joined our team. And so he is here to serve as an area expert in this field and to help with questions, especially when it gets down and we're talking about construction and design and things of that nature. So that's who he is, and he will be joining us through this process. So we're just going to start with our normal numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then next time we'll switch the numbers up. That's why we do the numbers, so that the first table doesn't always get to start first, but we will start. And please use your microphone, facilitators, and table 1. What is your question?
So probably most of the discussion revolved around a little bit of wondering about why we pushed high school 2027 to 2028.
You want to elaborate a little on that, Elaine?
There were multiple reasons, but the number 1, I believe, was just student capacity at opening when it needs to open. So when we got the new demographers report last January, the growth had slowed. We're still growing, but it's slowed because of the economy, and so the number of students to open it in 27, 28 was lower than we originally projected. And I don't know if, Holly, you want to add anything to that?
Okay, table 2.
That was our wondering as well, and just to go a little bit further than that, our continued wondering was going to be how is that going to impact the students, parking, portables, passing in the halls, etc.
I can bring you those numbers when we do the demographer, but we open it with fewer, the total high school population number is lower in 28, 29 than it was in 27, 28. So even though it's delayed a year, the pressures won't be enhanced or exasperated.
So one of the questions we had was, what is the cost difference for constructing like a portion of a school like SSMS, like you did, and then expanding it later? Was there a significant cost increase or difference by waiting?
I'm going to throw that to Henry. I'm going to assume that yes, there was a cost difference because construction costs just do this. So had we built it all in 2016, 27 when that campus was done, construction costs were definitely lower than they are today. We didn't bid it then, so I can't tell you what the exact number is, but I'm going to use my lifeline.
I would say you can count on 12% inflation at the moment and about 8.2% depending on when you want that school to open, you back up the timeline to the length of time to construct, and you back up the timeline approximately 6 months for design, what I call the non-sexy stuff like dirt work beforehand and work with the authorities that have jurisdictions. You get that initial starting point before you get to dirt, board approval of a design, execution, and then that's your starting point, but you have to factor all those in. And right now, escalation is 8.2% a month, period.
Okay, so we're gonna pivot to table 4.
So will this committee have full detailed pricing on high school 2 before they build the bond package, or will it be like a generic price per square foot estimate, like it was in the previous bond?
We're gonna have to bring you a number to put a bond package together, so.
So
Cost
yes,
estimate.
when we get to meeting 4, that's all meeting 4 is. And some of my friends in the room who were in the other committee wanted those numbers then, right? We were chomping to get them. But that's what meeting 4 is. It's every project priority and the cost associated with building it based on those timelines. Yes.
Right, yeah, but I think when we had the failed bond, we didn't have, because we hadn't designed it, so we didn't have detailed pricing. So I think the conversation was around, will it be pricing based on the design that's been estimated, or will it just be, okay, it's gonna be this many square foot at this
No,
price?
it will be on the design, because that's what we're going to build, so.
We'll be that far along in the process by the
Yes.
time you're building it. If you're worried about that timing, that
And I would say a caveat to some of what you'll discuss as a committee is you're lucky that you've authorized, the community has authorized the design because you can get to a harder, firmer number. The other projects haven't been designed, so they have to be based on square foot analysis.
Right, okay, right, yeah, since we had the failed bond before, that was kind of what our conversation centered around, so.
Thank you, Jennifer. Perfect. Okay, table some.
Okay, our question was, when was the demographic study last conducted since the long-range planning facility committee? And then how often does that get updated throughout this entire process of build-out?
So we received a new demographic study in January of this year, so 2024. Committee had that. I want to footnote, the long-range committee didn't really talk about high school because we already knew we were designing high school number 2, so there was no consideration for the committee to think about when does that come online, because it was already in place. Typically, we do that about every other year. Some school districts receive an update every year. If we're following the trends in the projections, then we don't necessarily order a new one if something is way off, but we do talk to the demographer periodically outside of those study times. If numbers change, what is the reason for that? They're also helping with attendance zone planning, so we are actively engaged with them all the time, but we don't pay for a full study every year. It's about every other year.
Fantastic. And remember, the demographer will be here at the next meeting, so we will be able to ask them a lot of questions. So all of that data will be presented and more questions for them. So if a question was not asked tonight, please put it on a Post-it note and hand that to me before you leave. I'm going to turn it back to Elaine, and she's going to go through School Finance 101, and then we'll have another table talk time.
Okay, my favorite subject, how to talk about school finance in 15 minutes so that you will all understand it. I've been doing this almost 30 years and I'm not sure I understand it. So if you leave here tonight with a full understanding, you get a gold star and I might have a job for you. Okay, I'm going to try to keep this pretty high level, but I'm going to warn you we are going to get a little bit in the weeds when it comes to taxes, so just be prepared. I have 4 bullets, Lizzie. I thought I had 5. I followed your rule. Okay, in Texas, public education is funded through a mix of local property taxes and state funds based on formulas. We have a ton of formulas, but what they come down to, how many students do you have in attendance, not enrolled? How often do they come to school? And what services are they receiving? And when I say services, are they a special ed student? Are they in a career tech program? Are they a gifted and talented program student? All of the different programs that we offer, you get some weighted funding for that. And then property values are a big part of that calculation. We have the operations side. So the operations side is based on a per student allotment plus those special weights to determine your funding. That allotment is $6,160 per student and extra bonus points for anyone that can tell me when that number was set. Not you. You have inside information. Any of my Taxpayer Tuesday friends here? 2019, the state set 6160, and we know this is the same environment we were in 2019, right? Relatively. Okay, once you get this determination of your allotment, the question becomes how much of the local tax revenue collected based on your property value appraisals and your tax levy, how much of that can fund that allotment? The other thing you need to remember is our total tax rate has two components. One for M&O, maintenance and operations, and one for what is called interest and sinking. We're going to look at those components. Okay, so that $6,160 is per student in attendance. So if they have 100% attendance, perfect attendance all year, we get $6,160. If they don't come every day, that $6,160 is reduced. Then you see this little funnel of all the different programs. Those are called weights and allotments. So we take the number of students that are receiving compensatory ed programming, special ed, career tech, bilingual. Those students get an extra piece of money, so the district gets extra money for them. And then we get a transportation allotment, a fast growth allotment if we are considered fast growth in that year, and that is gauged against all school districts across the state in that year and how fast everyone's growing. So if our growth slows and someone else's speeds up, we go lower on that list and we don't get as much. All of those calculations, those are the formulas. What do you see up here? It says that's your total tier 1 allotment. That is also referred to as our entitlement, your allotment, your revenues. What is missing from this calculation? Property taxes. So tax collections are not considered when calculating our entitlement, which is also referred to as our allotment, which is also referred to as our revenues. So we calculate how much revenue we're going to get based on our students and what services they're providing. Then we look to see how much are we collecting in taxes and how much of those tax dollars can fund that allotment. It's pretty simple, right? Okay, so I've tried to put this together in the simplest 1-minute elevator speech I can come up with. And so maybe this graphic does it as well. So we've got Johnny here. He has 100% attendance all year, so I get $6,160 for him. And then all those special programs that he might participate in, he might end up generating $7,000 a year for the district, depending on what he's in. I'm just throwing out a number there. But he has to be here every day, or it's reduced. That calculation, him being in attendance, plus the programs and the allotments, that's our, again, allotment, entitlement, revenues. Got a lot of blank stares. Okay. What about recapture? Where does recapture come? So think about this jar or this cylinder as representing these different formulas. So the gold part of this cylinder is that entitlement. So what we got back here, the calculation, That's our entitlement, that's represented by the gold cylinder portion here. The right-hand side of the cylinder represents all of our tax collections. So if our entitlement is gold, and our tax collections are the gold and the blue, the gold is what we get to keep in tax collections, and the blue, it's above that entitlement, right? And so that is what is recapture. So if our taxes exceed that entitlement, we don't get to keep them all. If our taxes were below the gold cylinder, then the state would give us additional money to fund that total entitlement that we calculated based on our students. So recapture comes into play after you calculate your entitlement or your allotment. You can all explain this in a minute in the elevator, right? It's as simple as I can make it. Okay, so let's talk about taxes. I said there's two components. This is where it's going to get real gray and complicated. This part is simple. You have part of the tax rate for operations. What is operations? That is everything it takes to run the district. It's paying all employees, it's supplies, it's transportation, it's utilities, athletics, all the things that go into running a school district. This is where recapture happens. So our entitlement says how much of our taxes on that 75.52 cents we get to keep and how much goes back to the state. The other portion of the tax rate is what is used for debt service. Those tax collections can only be used to pay principal and interest on bonds previously approved by the voters. I cannot use those tax collections to build a school, renovate a school, maintain a school. I can only use them to pay debt. So the way the system is set up requires a district to issue debt to do facilities and then have the taxpayers pay for it through a tax rate. But we cannot issue that debt until the voters approve it. So that's why we're here tonight. Okay, so this is where it gets fun. This M&O green bucket, that 7552, has two pieces. One is an MCR, a maximum compressed rate. Tony, I know you love that terminology. And that is determined by TEA. And then we have tier 2 pennies. Don't worry, you don't have to talk about pennies after this meeting ever again. But those tier 2 pennies, on the maintenance and operations side, those two have voter approval, and that was done in this district in 2016 when the voters approved a V8, what is now called a VATRE, to increase the M&O tax rate. There's not a lot of board control over the maintenance and operations rate in that the MCR is set by the state based on our property value growth, and then those tier 2 pennies are approved by voters. And we're not looking at adding any tier 2 pennies in the near future. The INS rate, however, is where the control and the variance is. It cannot exceed 50 cents per $100 evaluation per state law. And again, it is set to generate enough revenue to cover your obligations. So the limit is 50, Dripping Springs is at 35. So we have 15 cents that we could go up, but again, the voters would have to approve those bonds if they required more. They have to approve them anyway, but we would look at, are those bonds going to cost more than the 35 cents that we have now? And that's where the financial advisor will come later this fall and talk about capacity. This is another illustration of the tax rate on the M&O side. So the blue bar is that MCR. For us, it's currently 61.69 cents. And then those tier 2 pennies that I talked about, part of them were golden, part of them were copper. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but on October 8th, we have Taxpayer Tuesday on School Finance 101. So if you really want to dig into that, come see us. Where are we at? On Dripping Springs Elementary, October 8th. We'll get all into these pennies. But that is how the M&O rate is broken down, and it is currently 75.52 cents. Here's our tax rate history. If we go back to 2017, our total tax rate was $1.52. It was $1.17 for maintenance and operations. Now it's 75 cents. So it's gone down. And the INS rate was 35 cents, and it has remained 35 cents. But you can see the red bar, the maintenance and operations rate, has gone down each year since 2019, and that is a factor of state law changes and changes in how schools are funded. Okay, we're going to switch gears because you're all experts in School Finance 101. There will be a test. All right, funding bonds. So again, bonds may not be issued or taxes levied unless authorized by a majority of the voters in the district through an election. So I showed you the history of elections going back to 1996. So those were all bonds that previous voters have approved. The election has to be called by the Board of Trustees and state the date of the election, the propositions to be voted on, where the polling places are going to be, etc. What has to be in a bond order changes almost every legislative session. And then there is a set date in statute by which the board has to call that bond election. So we can't extend this committee through March and then think the board can call an election, because that's a date in February that they would have to do that by. So that's why we're meeting now. The bond election approval provides the authority of the board to then issue those bonds. So I mentioned earlier, we have $223 million of authorization that allows the board to issue that much in bonds. The board approved issuing $100 million last fall, and that's where we're at now. And so this last bullet, once approved by the voters, the bonds are sold as they're needed to fund projects. I have seen some districts with billion-dollar authorization go and sell it all at once, and that just boggles my mind, because I know they can't spend it that fast, and now they have to manage that and invest that. It'd be really fun to have that much money to invest, but it just blows my mind. And so this authorization, what I want you to take away from tonight is the authorization of the debt and the issuance of the debt are two different things. Some other general information. By law, the maximum maturity is 40 years on bonds sold. The longest we extend bonds for maturity is 30 years. And we also try to match the maturity of bonds to the life of the asset. So I often hear, why are you doing a 30-year bond for computers? Well, we're not. We're amortizing some of those bonds that are sold for a 5 or 10-year period, so that we're not paying for something 30 years that's not going to last 30 years. Taxes are frozen for taxpayers who are age 65 or disabled, and if you had a frozen levy, you just got some major benefit from legislative action. And here's what happened. When you turn 65, you let the appraisal district know, and they're going to freeze your taxes at that level in that year. Well, if you turned 65 back in 2017, and our tax rate was at $1.52, that's what your taxes were frozen at. And I just showed you that our tax rate has come down. So the state recognized that there was kind of a penalty for being frozen at that higher rate. And so the last legislative sessions addressed that, corrected that. And so if you're a frozen levy taxpayer, you should have seen a major decrease in your tax bill for tax year 2023. And we showed the board some examples of that Monday night. where taxpayers saw an $1,800, $1,200 decrease in their tax bill. You might say, Elaine, that's not major. When it's frozen for years, that's major to me. And so just understand, if you fit in this category, no matter what the district does with the bond in the future, your taxes are frozen, so there's no impact there. Unless you improve your property or you sell it, then you lose that frozen until you rebuy another property. Ratings can impact interest rates. What are ratings? We all have a credit score, right? The district has a credit score, but it's called a rating, and we use Standard & Poor's, and they ask us a lot of questions before we issue bonds, and they give us a rating. We have a AA with Standard & Poor's, but even better, we have the highest rating you can get, AAA, because the state of Texas does something great, and they back school district bonds with their own funds. So if for some reason a school district defaulted and couldn't make their bond payment, the state of Texas would step in and cover that. And so investors love AAA paper in Texas because it's really safe. If we were a district with a B rating, when I go to sell bonds, I'm going to pay more than a AA rated. So that's why that's important. Okay, I said I want you to leave here tonight understanding authorization versus issuance. Bonds are authorized when voters approve the election. It's very similar to a credit line. Voters say, yes, we're going to authorize you to issue X amount of bonds between now and some future date. There is no debt on my balance sheet until I sell those bonds. Therefore, there's no impact on the tax rate until I sell those bonds, if there's going to be an impact. There's not always going to be an impact. Bonds are issued when we go to the market and investors buy them. Who buys school district bonds? Nobody? Individuals do. Insurance companies, State Farm loves school district bonds. Venture companies, big pools, they love school district bonds. So there is a big market for municipal bonds. When I go to the market and I sell to investors, now it becomes a debt on my balance sheet, and that's when we start paying them back according to the bond documents. When I sell those bonds is going to depend on a lot of things. Now, if it's a $30 million bond in a district this size, I would argue sell it all at once because there is a cost to go into the market. If it was a $500 million bond, I would not sell it all at once because that's a lot of work internally. But what we're going to look at is how fast are the projects going to be built? How fast do I need cash? Do my property values at the time support the issuance of those bonds at the tax rate that we told the voters it would be at? And what's going on in the market? I definitely don't want to go to the market when there's a new economic report coming out, or Houston ISD is issuing bonds, or the toll authority. Like, we want to see who's in the market. We want to see what's going on with interest rates. I mean, there's been a lot of talk recently about the Feds lowering. I would not have gone to market right before that decision. So there's a lot of factors into when we are going to sell those bonds. I said it earlier, property values must support the cost. And before we can even go out for an election, the Attorney General has to certify that we'll be able to pay those bonds back at that 50-cent cap. So there's a lot of oversight. And then the tax rate is set to support bond payments. So if there was going to be a need to increase the tax rate here, it would have to be set to support those bonds. We try really, really hard not to issue bonds above that 35 cents, and so far we've been able to do that. Okay, that is a quick lesson in School Finance 101. I'm sure y'all are all just thinking, when is this woman going to be quiet? We'll talk about this a lot the rest of this committee. Issuance, authorization, capacity, all of these fun things. Dr. Lizzie, I'm turning it back to you.
Okay, we're gonna take about 8 minutes again to talk about this subject that's kind of like hieroglyphics, right? That's the way I look at it. And to come up with your questions. So y'all go ahead and get started. Bring us back together. I'm gonna ask Elaine to come on up and Henry. And we're gonna start backwards this time. Like I promised you, we're not always gonna start table one because we want everybody to have a chance, opportunity. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Elaine.
Where are we going? Table 5. This makes me so nervous. I don't know the questions.
So as someone who reports to y'all, this makes me a little nervous, this question, but I'm gonna ask it.
Oh, hold it against you.
How many bonds in this district have failed? And what were the major contributors to those bonds failing?
The only one I had firsthand knowledge of failing was in November of 22, and my assumption is because of the number for the high school.
And there's
There was
always,
another one that failed, it was before my time.
and there's always factors that contribute. You know, go to any district across the state, if they have a fail bond, it's always, there's something, a list you could probably come up with.
Yeah, I worked in 3 fast growth districts, Bastrop, Bernie, and now Hutto. And usually the factor's not the cost, it's going from a 1-horse town to 2. It's that error when all of a sudden, sleepy little, beautiful, dripping springs that we all love to come and visit, go to the salt lick and hang out, go to the wineries, is changing. So what's difficult for voters is having that conversation when you go to two different schools. And Bernie Champion High School in Bernie was a challenge. When the Cedar Creek School was built in Bastrop, 125 years of maroon, where did this baby blue come from? So you have to be, as citizens, aligned with your district, your leadership, your mission and vision, and make the case that we're addressing growth, but we're going to make sure there's equity in both facilities. But that's usually the biggest factor.
Table 4.
Jennifer, what's your
We
question?
actually do not have any questions. We had a lot of very good conversation, but you covered it all. So we have, all of our questions are going to be covered on, we had questions about capacity and things, but all things that'll be covered on future meetings. So I think we're good.
Perfect.
Thank you. Table
3.
Okay, so if the district collects excess funds on the INS side, do you have to use the excess funds to buy down debt, or can you just keep the funds? Are there any parameters about spending down those excess funds?
You do need to spend those funds, and we do that through a defeasance, and that is paying debt early, which saves us on interest cost, and to date, we've saved 34-point-something million by doing that.
Yay. All right, table 2.
We did not have any questions. You did a fabulous job. We had great conversation, but we did not have any questions.
Great job.
And table 1.
Finally, table 1.
I think the only question that was not answered by our experts was just about recapture dollars and what happens to those dollars once they leave Dragoon Smith?
I love that question. So recapture dollars go back to the state, and in the good old days, there was this system of Robin Hood, where you take from the rich to give to the poor. That system doesn't exist per se, and that recapture dollars go back to the state general fund, and the state lawmakers get to decide how those recapture dollars are used. So they can be used to fund roads, general whatever the state funds, health and human services. I would love it if all the recapture dollars were pooled and they were redistributed to all schools based on a student count and a certain dollar amount. That would make it a little less hurtful, but that's not the deal. It goes to the general fund in the state, and they decide what to do with those dollars. Some trivia that I love to throw out: before the last legislative session, recapture across the state had grown to $5 billion. So that all came from school districts. So to distribute it back This would have caused no pain, and it would have really helped public education. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Very nice. Y'all, you have an incredible person in your district, Elaine, who can explain these things. I work all over the state, and it's very rare. So you're very blessed to have her, and we appreciate you. Great job. Thank you so much. All right. So as we close out our night, I always point to your kids, and you have some students in the room, but you know, we have staff, we have students, we have parents, taxpayers, community members. This is their story, and that's what we're building in this room. And this story can't stay in here. So when people drive by here, they're gonna be like, wonder what those people are cooking up in that committee, in that room in there. And they're probably gonna say, oh, they're gonna raise our taxes, you know. I mean, that's generally where it goes, because we're talking about money. So you have to go out and share this information with others. I challenge you to go talk to a certain amount of people. You probably learned something tonight. Go share it with others and talk to them and get their opinions. Like I said earlier, not everybody in Dripping Springs can be in here, so we want you to go out and talk to them and bring back in their viewpoints into this room. So before we leave real quick, and this is just free speech in this area right now, what did you like about tonight? Somebody just name something you liked about tonight. Structure. Thank you. What else?
Wonderful people at my table.
Great family at her table. I love it. Education, data, information, content. Okay? Is there anything we can do better next time? Do you have a wish list?
Could we have the notes in advance?
We will work on that. We'll think about that. Some of these numbers come at the 9th hour, but if we can get that to y'all, we'll work on that. Thank you for asking that, for sure. Anything else? Okay. All right, so the next time we come together will be October the 9th, same room, same time. You know we'll be starting at 6. I hope you can be here at 6, and we'll be finished by 8. Thank you so much, and y'all have a safe trip home.